Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 322 featuring Doug Wilkinson, Global Head of 3D at Buck. Doug is a really cool cat, and it was great catching up with Doug. It was so interesting to hear some of his stories and his backstories. What did you think of this podcast with him, Kristen?
It was really cool, and especially if you listen to the podcast a lot, he talks about a lot of people that have been on the podcast. So if you guys have paralleled jobs, it's really fun to listen to. And he's worked at DD, Sway, now Buck, and just discusses some of his past projects, like the Heineken commercial with David Fincher, and working with Joe. I don't say his name right. Kaczynski. In car commercials. So yeah, it was great. I love it.
Really cool. Yeah, really cool. It's really interesting to hear. So, I mean, some of his first jobs, one of his first internship jobs was actually at Neoscape with Lon as his boss. Yeah. And then one of his first bosses when he worked in the gaming industry was actually Dan Thrawn, who is one of my co-hosts on the Martini Giant. So it's really kind of interesting to hear all of those stories. But more importantly, this is really about some of the stuff he's been doing at Buck. And Buck is a really interesting company, an extraordinarily creative company that does really great work. And Doug's sort of taken over there as the head of 3D, and he's been doing some really interesting work to that position for a company that's that creative is actually a very challenging thing, especially considering that the fact that they're in many locations around the world these days, which is awesome for them. So really cool to see where Buck has been. And Doug is really a cool guy also, so it's nice to see that. Okay, Kristen, we have a couple of announcements. What's up? What's going on in the world right now?
All right, you can find these out at chaos.com/events. The first one is the Real-Time Conference, which you will be speaking at tentatively on the 28th. And you can find this out at realtimeconference.com, and it will be April 26th, 27th, and 28th. So,
that's right. Event. Mm-hmm. And registration is free. So if anyone can participate, and there are events going on all day across multiple time zones. So you should be able to have something that's going on. And there's a lot of people who attend. It's very interactive. It really interacts with the participants who are watching it. It is, as I said, it is the real-time conference, and therefore it is not pre-recorded video. So that should be really interesting to see that as well. So I really highly encourage you guys to check it out, the real-time conference. I'm going to be hosting a panel that's going to be on the 28th, as Kristen said, and that panel will be about the metaverse and architecture. And it will be, I think, will be pretty cool. The people on the panel, it's all tentative, so I'm not going to make final announcements, are really awesome. So I'm very excited about that. Again, that is on April 28th. And then what's the other event going on?
The other one will be on April 14th, and it will be an online event, and it's called Discover the Power of V-Ray 5 for Revit with one of our partners.
Right. Novage is doing that on April 14th. So go check it out. chaosgroup.com/events for all of your event news. And we don't really have any new product announcements coming out just yet. There are new things happening, brewing. There always is. So if you want to know any more about that, make sure to check out chaos.com for all of those events and all of those announcements of our products going on there. But if people want to know more about the podcast, where can they go, Kristen?
You can go to facebook.com/CG Garage Podcast or chaos.com/CG Garage. Oh, and youtube.com/Chaos Group TV. I'm going to forget about that.
There you go. Right. And all of these podcasts are, of course, as Kristen mentioned, they are going to be in video format as well. So you can check those out, youtube.com/Chaos Group TV for the podcasts in there. And there's going to be a couple that are going to be very, very exciting to see in video form. So you're going to want to check those out for sure. And they are on our Facebook page as well. So the videos are on our Facebook page.com. Facebook.com/CG Garage Podcast. That's where all the videos are as well. If you have ideas of other podcasts or other things you want to do, Chris and I have been very busy. I am literally recording nearly a podcast a day these days. So, but if you have other ideas of podcasts that you want to hear about, let us know. labs@chaosgroup.com is where you can reach us. We'd love to hear from you with all your feedback, your ideas, or your suggestions, or your questions. All right. That being said, please enjoy this awesome podcast with our good friend, Doug Wilkinson of Buck.
Welcome to another CG garage where the chaos group talks. You'll know it's over when the last bucket drops. We're gonna fire off rays in high dynamic range. We know that ambient occlusion is passe. Global illumination won't lead you astray. And while image-based lighting is really swell, you need to make sure everything has Fresnel.
All right, so let's think about this, Doug. What show did we work on together? Was it Tron? Tron,
yeah.
Okay.
For sure that one. Yeah.
Right. What were you doing on? What was it on Tron? What were you going on Tron?
Well, under Carl Denham. So it was light disc, and then a little bit of things here and there, and then the heads.
Oh, you did a bunch of heads.
And we did the heads, yeah.
Yeah, so you were doing mental ray head stuff.
Yep.
We were working with Kami and those guys.
So awesome. I still have very vivid memories of the excitement of working on that with everyone.
That's probably the biggest show I've ever worked on. I think definitely the biggest show I've ever worked on, because it was like 1,000 people working on that movie that we were connected to.
Yeah.
But it was quite a thing. Quite a thing. Now, I think what's also interesting is that obviously you and I have that connection with Tron, but you also have a connection with Lon.
Oh yeah, you know Lon. Okay.
Yeah, well, I work with Lon.
Of course you know. Sorry, of course you know Lon. You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking about when I met Lon at Neoscape, like a lifetime ago.
Yes.
Like, oh God, I know. Of course, Lon.
I know. Yeah. Yes. So it's been okay. So there's a lot of interconnection. So what I wanted to do is we go through the stepping stones of that journey, and how Lon ended up in that story, and how I ended up in that story, and then where we are today and where we're going in the future. So obviously you have some resemblance of architecture in your background, some visual effects in your background, and all that stuff. So where did this all start? Where did all the passion start?
Probably this is a totally typical answer. Jurassic Park. So,
right.
Like, okay, loved the movie, but when I watched the making of and saw those like animators running around in the parking lot, climbing over bikes and things, pretending to be, dinosaurs, I was like, I don't know if that's me, but I definitely want to work with those people. Right. This is amazing. I had no idea that this was like even a profession. So
right.
So had some aspirations to work in visual effects. The more I learned about it and researched it, the more I was like, this is such an amazing blend of technical and like just like raw computer horsepower, and like, yeah, let's just push. Let me get my hands on that. I want to push that as far as I can push it.
Right.
And
what were you doing at the time when you saw that?
Yeah, so 93, I think.
93 is when it came out.
So
yep.
Graduated high school in 97 and went into computer science for 2 years, and totally learned, very valuable, learned that that was not for me, but I was that kind of thinker, analytical, and but I definitely was a visual person. Like I would frame through. This is so nerdy, but I remember like having a VCR that would let me play back things, and I could pause, and it would actually give me like a still, like a good quality, and I would like frame through Terminator and all these things, and I'm just trying to figure out like how are they doing this stuff? This is just like, I have to know. And on DVD too, I was just like, what is going on? This is absolutely amazing. So that was really like where the inspiration came from. And, I knew I was good with technical stuff. So I started with computer science, but totally it was not for me. Like once it started to get hard, I knew
you wanted to be an artist more than anything.
Yeah. And I did. I switched schools, and I switched over, I eventually ended up at Northeastern University in Boston, which there's some connections that I can make for you too that you might find interesting. As like an art major with a concentration in animation, and at that time it was just, I mean, Northeastern University is known as like a business school and a law school and a lot of engineering. Not really known for that.
It's art.
Okay, architecture program actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, like this is becoming an artist, learning to become an artist at a business school is super interesting. But that's actually what connected me with Ryan White and Dan Thron. And
Dan Thron. Oh,
yeah.
You knew Dan.
Yeah, I knew that's where I actually knew Dan. Was I took one of the classes I took as a student there. The 3D class was taught by Ryan White, and who later went. Those guys later went on to start their own startup in Boston, and I was the first hire they ever made, and we had a lot of fun together. We did some really hard projects, and it was really just like the more I got into it, the more I just became really hungry for more. And that area, you know, Boston has a few things that still that, so what else was there? Neoscape. That was like my first, what I call my first real internship was at Neoscape. And Lon was there, and I still have good memories of that place. I really like, I learned a lot about coming to a desk every day and having a job in an industry, a 3D industry at all. So just like, I don't know, this must have been around 2000 or 2001 or 2. Then later hooked up more with Dan and Brian at their company, which was called Rust Monkey at the time. And we did some stuff for there was a lot of video game production that was done in that area. And they had some connections there, so we worked on some cinematics, some in-game stuff, animating a lot of stuff.
You working on Thief at the time?
Yeah, that's right. Thief. Cutscenes for Thief, cutscenes for Neverwinter Nights.
Yeah, you know that Dan I do a second podcast with him.
Good. Okay, yeah. I didn't realize, because I had listened to the ones that you guys had done on here, and I was like,
so we spun it off.
I love it.
We spun it off, and that's called Martini Giant, and it's me and Dan Thron and Eric Sheely. I don't know if you know Eric Sheely, but
no.
But yeah, Dan and I, it's all about our passion for movies, and you know that Dan's passion for movies. He's like a walking encyclopedia.
I learned a lot. Exactly. I learned so much. I mean, that was really exciting going to work.
Well, Thief was such a great. So you worked on Thief a little bit, huh?
Yeah, I worked on the Thief 3 stuff. Yeah,
that's a great game. It's a really great game. And it's getting a revival. There's a new sort of underground fan bases. It's getting a revival. Yeah.
So yeah, it was really like cool. Dan would he would paint these Photoshop files that had 30 layers, which at that time was slow, but he would do it, and he would paint in these. I mean, we used to joke and call it like Dan Ray or whatever, and he would paint in all these highlights as separate layers. So there would be a shot with like a some like a fireplace, and the camera moves, and he would paint these like pre-warped, lens warped images, and we would bring them into After Effects, separate them all out into their layers, start animating these camera moves and moving these highlights around and flickering things, and it was really fun.
Wow.
And so it started as really like animating in After Effects for them. I knew I always wanted to get into 3D, and so when we got a couple more jobs there, and the big one we did that was 3D was a cutscene for Empire Earth 2. I think it was Empire Earth 2. And it was really wild, but it was really fun. And then it became like 2005, and I was, there's just not a ton of stuff in the Northeast. So there was this real like decision that was like, do I try to move to, I want to go to the work. So do I go to New York City and get more into like graphics packages and
But what there was someone in the northeastern or northwestern Massachusetts that had a small, like out of the middle of nowhere.
Oh yeah.
Who was that?
Kleiser Walzak, are you thinking?
Kleiser Walzak. Yep.
Those guys are amazing. They did a bunch of the stuff for X-Men. Man, I applied to that place so many times.
Really? Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sure.
I was just dying to get into there.
The one place in Massachusetts that's up there. Yeah.
Exactly. I was dying to get into there, but they ended up going into other stuff. They were actually doing these virtual human type. They were calling it synthespians at the time, and this was a while ago. But I think they moved on to like other things, or they closed or sold or something. And then I met
Jeff Kleiser a couple times.
Oh, really?
So yeah.
I always got the impression that they were pretty visionary at that time.
They were. You know who else is still out there is what's his name? Doug Trumbull still lives out in Massachusetts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, but he did like 2001. So
so funny to think. It was like as I discovered some of the stuff, there was another guy who ran optical printers out there who I totally forgot his name, but it was so weird that it's strange because it's like farmland and it's like nobody really thinks about Western Massachusetts.
And it was in the north, like around where what's the big Williams, like
Williams,
north, yeah. So it's pretty rural out there, and there's suddenly there's a visual effects studio out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. They did some test stuff for Matrix out. Somebody, it might have been Trumbull, or I don't know who it was, but somebody was doing like test stuff for Bullet Time out there. More behind the scenes DVD sleuthing.
Sure.
But yeah, so New York City or LA, and at that time, so made the at the time girlfriend, now my wife, company. Like we were like, let's just do it. We have a Honda, a 91 Honda Civic with no air conditioning and like count on one hand number of $1,000 in our pocket, really, to just try and move out. And we had I'll try to get a job at Starbucks if nothing works out. And then we came out here and I realized that like
so this is around 2005.
This would be 2005. Yeah.
And you moved out to LA?
Yeah.
Okay.
Moved out. Didn't have, it was a real leap of faith. Probably now I realize it was probably just being pretty impulsive, okay, let's just do it.
Yeah.
It's funny because all the backup was like, oh, I'll get a job at Starbucks. And then when you arrive to LA, you realize that all the Starbucks jobs are hugely coveted by actors and writers who are also trying to like break into the business, So I was like, oh God, well, it's not going to be a Starbucks job as a backup.
Right.
But
you go anywhere in Venice, all of the wait staff are extremely charismatic people because they're all actors.
It was just like, what a shock. I mean, I'm from Pennsylvania originally. That's like growing up with cornfields on the edge of your property, and it was just completely surreal for a while, like multiple years, because then I started to realize that too. I was like, oh my gosh. These people are actors.
Every bartender is also an actor and a screenwriter and a director.
Yes. Yeah. And they're not like, they say everyone is so friendly and they're just want to joke with you. And then I realized like, I just wanted to be like, please, I wanted to wear like a sign that was like, I have no power in Hollywood. I am not like going to be able to hire you. You can just treat me however you want, but yeah, and I applied to a bunch of places and got a call back from Digital Domain.
Oh, wow. That's big.
Honestly, I think it was really because I knew Lightwave.
Oh, right.
To be completely honest, it's like, here's fresh blood that knows Lightwave. His reel is not, awful. There's a little bit of competency in there. And, it was... They were dying for that. And I don't think that it was really sustainable. I just think there wasn't much of there weren't a lot of people using Lightwave in the freelance community in Los Angeles. In retrospect, it was like, it was on its way out slowly. And that allowed me to get in there. And I met a few other people who were young and trying to get in. John Neas, who ended up, working on Tron as well, and a few other people, and I just was so lucky to have that opportunity, and I just ate it up. I mean, I really was like career 24/7 at that point. Just wanted to learn everything I could.
So 2005, you started at DD. in the commercial department, assuming because of Lightwave.
Yep.
So Ed Ulbrich was running commercials at that time.
You got it.
And you got people like
so
Dan
such a force.
Thron and Carl Denham, Chris Norpsham.
Yeah, I mean, just the in retrospect,
Eric
really,
Barba.
the who's who.
I'm assuming Eric.
Yeah.
Eric was
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
It was such a who's who of like,
Yeah.
it's awesome stuff, you know. And you spent time there too, so
Yeah.
you know, going from cornfields 5 years earlier to walking through, you know, models from the Fifth Element and just like
and Titanic
God,
is there.
yeah, it was just like unbelievable.
The Titanic model was always a little disappointing when you see it up close. You're like, oh, the Titanic. And then you get all closer. It's like, wait a minute, really?
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool, but it's
no, it is.
Yeah.
No, I know exactly what you're saying. There was like, you know, stuff from Stealth and when the model shop was still active, and they had the bus from Speed kind of crunched up the movie Speed, but it was only like about 5 feet long. It's really funny just to like walk by that and be like, oh, there's the bus from Speed. There's the thing from there. It's just like, where is this really happening to me?
Yep.
So I really dug in hard there, and just was like, number one thing I wanted to do was when I realized, oh, Nuke compositors really set the look for things here. So that was like my number one goal, was like, I gotta learn Nuke, and just kind of picked it up.
Yeah.
Opened other people's scripts, turned things on and off.
Well, DD is the mecca for Nuke, really, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. At the time, it was Nuke 2, and there was no, they hadn't started encapsulating that into a separate product.
Right.
It was like D2, then it became D2 Software.
D2 Software, right.
They started selling it, and then, they sold it to
all
the
the
stuff.
And,
that's when things started getting complicated with DD, but yeah, I mean, I have a lot of memories of DD, even though
my first stint at DD was 2002, I think, and Nuke was, you open Nuke and it was nothing. It was just a blank slate.
It's awesome. Yeah.
And you had to like type in a command, and you had to know.
Oh, you typed
in what you were
going
to do. Like you do add, and then it would put an add node in there, and then you do mult, and they put a mult node in there. So you had to know what you wanted.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It was very efficient back in those days.
It was very efficient.
We were also working at like SD res, so I think
it
was kind of nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
so what were some of the
memorable
commercials you started working on over there?
We worked on a commercial. I totally got myself in over my head on one commercial, which was for Heineken. It was a Super Bowl spot for Heineken, and it was directed by David Fincher. It had Brad Pitt was in this thing, and it was the story about Brad Pitt going to his refrigerator, saw that he was like, oh, I ran out of beer. Brad Pitt. And he's like, I gotta get some beer. So he puts on his cool jacket with everything's cool. And he, the story is that like the paparazzi is kind of just like waiting around all the time for him to leave his apartment. And they now they see him like he's leaving to basically go to 7-Eleven and buy some Heineken. And so the whole story is this comedy and really throwing, it's like a comment probably from both David Fincher and I assume both of those guys, like saying, let's make the paparazzi look like complete idiots. So we just used Massive. So this was the first time we used Massive at DD. And I begged to be able, I was like, please let me learn it. I won't let you down.
Right.
So I ran Massive on that job for like, ended up being 4 or 5 shots of crowds of paparazzi just falling, and there was these like huge aerial shots of like people. It ended up being like 10,000 little agents running through the streets and stuff, and it was an absolute nightmare for me. I was totally in over my head. I got a ton of help by the lovely team at Massive Software at that time. They were so helpful, and but but I was like really just wanted to be at the forefront, you know, like I was like, this is new. Massive is used in Lord of the Rings. Like people are using Massive commercially now, and one person can create these crowds. Like that's mind blowing to me. So that was extremely memorable, and super tough. It was Super Bowl, so it was like work. You know, I ended up having to work over the whole holiday break to prep stuff. But it was really amazing. I got to go to set for fun. Basically, I didn't really need to be there, but they let me go to set, so that was exciting. Yeah, like what else was super good? I mean, there was started doing stuff with Joe Kosinski was directing, so I got to work on a Hummer spot.
The Hummer spot, yeah,
which was this cool transforming car. It was like it was a total like guys commercial. It was like, oh, let's put these like rocket launchers on the side of this thing and grappling hooks or whatever. Like it was really like meant to look like a video game. And that was really fun. That was my first time really leading something there. Almost, you know, really leading something in a serious production. Right. And did a few more things as a lead there. Then left. I did a big spot there. The last big thing I did there in commercials was this multiple spots for the Chevy Malibu, which Joe Kosinski was directing, and there was a bunch of different spots, and that was
with
a
the
huge
baby
team. Yes, totally.
I remember that.
So super dystopian in retrospect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like really strange. But I love, you know, but it was really fun to be there and work on that. And that
really started Joe's career, honestly. I mean, I remember Joe, you know, I remember Joe way before that, but I remember when he was first starting to try to get into the commercials and trying to do, like he did when I was at Speed Shape, he was trying to like do a spec commercial at Speed Shape. And that's he did, and then finally he got a deal to do the commercials at DD, and he got into the car commercial. Like if you get into be a good car commercial guy, and that's obviously because of Fincher's influence, because I think Fincher sort of always liked what he did. That really started it, and if it wasn't for those that good under foundation of him doing car commercials, that's what allowed him to do Tron and Oblivion, and obviously now Top Gun. Top Gun is a very fancy car commercial if you think about it, and so is Tron. If you think about it, Tron, the light bike sequence it's a beautiful 9-minute car commercial.
And it's architectural, and it's like design. It's so many of his strengths. In that movie.
Yeah, I don't mean to disparage. Car commercials are actually really good and very talented. I mean, people need to do those things.
Yeah, I mean, like I went from working on car commercials to working on cell phones to like there's always. Did you work on the Nine Inch Nails video? No.
Okay, that was before you got there, right?
No, that was like the first time they used V-Ray. Well, I don't know if that's actually true, but yeah, in commercials. Thank you. Right, because you mentioned Speed Shape too. Like all of this, I should have like the pin board with the string, because like Speed Shape is Rob Niederhorst, and and like I don't think I've ever met the dude in person, but I have been I feel like I've been in the room right after he left on multiple occasions, almost like figuratively, because I ended up working at Sway. I ended up,
that was a Sway too.
Yeah, exactly. But after you guys, and he was at DD. I'm just going all over the place in time here, but he was at DD. He did some shots for Stealth. This is sort of the legend. Is like he did some shots for Stealth.
Guess who introduced him to V-Ray? Guess who introduced him to V-Ray?
Okay, here we go. Well, now I know the source.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he likes to take credit for the V-Ray thing. Well, he was good at actually getting it used, but I was the one who's like, here, try this.
Yeah, you should look into this, right?
Yeah. Because they were doing a stealth test. The stealth test was Brazil, V-Ray, Lightwave, and RenderMan.
God.
Yeah.
Brazil.
And it
Okay.
was ridiculous. Yes. Yeah. By the way, render wars are useless. I don't care who tells you who they are. And trust me, I work for a renderer. The only thing that counts with a render war is everything should look exactly the same, because 2 plus 2 equals 4. And no matter what math you're using, it's always going to be 4. And the only thing that matters is how fast it renders and how fast it allow you to get there. And that's the only thing. And if anything looks better, then you did something wrong.
Yeah, that's a good point. And and today I would say also all of those things plus work, like usability and workflow, like that's a huge differentiator now, is like, because it used to be about, will this thing even run right at this resolution? And can you even afford to render motion blur on something that's reflective?
Yeah.
And
those are all solved problems now.
those are all totally solved problems. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
And
well, now you got to carry that all the way through to real time. We're getting there.
Yeah. It's very exciting. That's good stuff. Which we're trying.
Cool. Okay, so I want to distract from your story, but I love going on little sidelines like this, because it's like,
me too. This isn't gonna. I don't think we're gonna be a good combination for this, because that's what I do too.
right.
So
the Malibu
V-Ray,
stuff,
right? Like V-Ray, the Malibu stuff. Like finally, it was like, oh, we're here. These are these tests. Look at these tests. This stuff is incredible. It looks so realistic, and then when you saw how easy. The V-Ray, I remember it was called like the V-Ray Power Shader or something. I think at that time, maybe it became Advanced later.
It just became the V-Ray shader.
In the V-Ray, and then the V-Ray, it was like, oh my God, this thing is like insane. Are you kidding me? Like, this is just I'm dropping it. I'm going to forget. Like, it's more realistic than Lightwave and way easier and faster than Mental Ray, which was really like, those were the things that I had access to at the places I was working. And so I really kind of, I knew how much easier it made my job. So I kind of like, that's what sort of drew me to Sway a little bit, was, this is this little V-Ray shop, and they're doing, all this cool stuff. They're doing a lot of cars, but they're starting to do like other things. And, so I spent some time there after you and Rob, apparently. And, which is a terrible name, maybe I should. Anyway. So from there, and then I started, one of my buddies from school had moved out to LA around 2006, and he did like one job at Digital Domain, and it just wasn't for him. He was much more of a design. He was interested in design, extremely creative. His name was Jeremy Solomon. He was, he's the one who connected me with Buck Design. And, he pulled me after, so like basically the connection is after the Chevy Malibu job, I was really interested in sort of exploring, and I felt like I had a couple years of that big studio experience, and I kind of wanted to freelance a little bit, see what that was like. And so this was an opportunity for me to go and kind of partner up with him, and we would freelance at a few places. So I worked at Logan and a few of these other places what was appealing about it was that it was the complete opposite of like a place like Digital Domain. The place was bright, huge windows, totally not, there was no pipeline in these places. It was very like, you would come in and you had the solutions, like you could help them to get their vision built. And so it was setting up Render Farm and doing all these other things. And it turns out like I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the breadth of working at these small places. And when I got the chance to freelance with Buck, it was really fun, and the projects were super goofy compared to
when was this that you were working with them?
I first worked for them freelance in, I think, 2006. And it's a I mean, here it is. Like I worked with them freelance. I became staff with them for about a year and a half or so. And then I left. It got really overwhelming. That was also when the sort of financial meltdown was really taking hold. And they were really starting to get into visual effects at that time, trying to compete with motion theory. Became Murata later.
Right.
And it was hard. It was very stressful. There was really just a few of us there. So I took some time off and left Buck, went back to DD when I heard they were using V-Ray on a feature.
Right.
I'm not kidding.
Okay, so I got to
honestly
tell you,
I was like, yeah.
there's a lot of parallels between what you went through and what I went through, and I'll explain why I said. So I was at Sway, and Sway from 2006 to 2008, right? And one of the big jobs I had at Sway was we were hired as a subcontractor to Buck to do a car commercial for Corolla.
Yes, the Toyota.
The Toyota. Yes. And I was the head of that at the time.
And was it awful? It must have been awful working for
so it was a very I don't know if it was really awful. I'll tell you exactly what happened on it. It was basically, the idea was we're going to make like a 4-minute commercial with the idea was they wanted to showcase all the different features that this Corolla had. And for different regions, they would cut in different features that you would want, or they could change it out. So it is, you make a 2-minute or a 3-minute commercial, and then you cut it out into you take the beginning and the end, and then all the features in the middle you can swap around. And it was all shot on miniature, which was their big idea, which was a cool idea. And we got to work with miniatures. And then we're going to put CG cars into the miniature. So it was like camera traveling around this miniature thing. And then we had the CG car in there. And it all happened around the holidays, just like you were describing before. So you totally missed your holidays, et cetera, et cetera. Now the Buck people were, like you mentioned, are extremely creative, right? And the Sway people were like dead on accurate car people, right? So doesn't always jive with can we do this? So it became interesting, but I really liked the attitude, and they actually used to hang out at Sway. And I think Jeremy, that name sounds familiar. Might have been one of the guys.
I'm sure he was there at the time.
Yeah. And it was really kind of interesting. I liked it. They went to a high-end soda pop store and gave us a bunch of really high-end sodas as a gift once. And I thought that was really awesome of them. So I like doing that. I like filming stuff. And then I went to Method after that. And I ended up leaving Method because I got wind that they were looking for someone who was a V-Ray expert for their first big feature to use V-Ray. So same thing as you.
That's awesome.
So we ended up back at DD for the same inspiration.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I was count me in, I had just sort of reached my limit at the time. Really, it was rough. I went there after even I'm losing track, but I wasn't there. I wasn't at Buck at the time that Corolla thing, that the Corolla job happened, but definitely I ended up going there and saying, well, we can do this ourselves. We should learn to do this. We should try at least.
Yeah. But you guys did such great, Buck does such great commercials. The one with the bear drinking cola was just absolutely cracking me up.
It was insane.
Such great creative groups. And that was a really great thing about Buck is the creativity coming out of there and the sense of humor. Obviously the sense of humor was a big one too.
It's just really different. Everything was really different there. But the fact that the biggest difference was directors would work for production companies when you were when you were at Sway or at Digital Domain. There wasn't that much stuff being directed in house at that time, and at Buck they almost never have used an outside director. And it turned it's here's all these guys and girls were all super young, thrown into this room together, and everybody kind of gets to say whatever they want. Well, at least it would feel this way when you're trying to run a CG job, and you just have comments coming all the time. Full access. Like the directors are sitting, one row over, and so it's different. You don't have that cadence where you would have dailies. Didn't really mean anything. It was like, hey, I'm looking through the server and I'm seeing some things, and the iteration speed was awesome. It was it was like basically it was thrilling because it was extremely challenging, and they were constantly asking for things up until the very last minute. Like they definitely became very trusting to say, can we do this? But they never held back anything. There'd be these moments where in the last 48 hours of a job, they'd be like, we think it'd be cooler if this character was like on a skateboard for the whole spot. Like, can we do that? Or what, those were the early days of learning, like calibrating to each other. But I was really, I've always been the kind of person that even in school, even in college, when I was learning Lightwave, I loved to read the manual, understand everything, try all the buttons, and then start helping other people with their schoolwork. And I would put my own stuff last because I just really loved empowering other people. And so going to Buck was perfect. This is an amazing opportunity. No render farm, no folder, no real understanding.
Pipeline was more of an idea, right?
Yeah, Pipeline was like our first Pipeline, which you couldn't even call it that by today's standards, but was something I wrote staying there late from like 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. just like for a couple months. I would write like this little tool and that little tool. Here's a publish tool. Here's an import tool. Here's something to acetize. Here's something to, just like little Maya blibs and bobs, and it would kind of be strung together and everything would work perfect as long as we didn't do a weird job. But at Buckout, they were all kind of a little different. So that was a really fun challenge. And switching them over from Mental Ray to V-Ray was really fun. Really, really fun. And at that time, there weren't a lot of V-Ray freelancers in the Maya world that were in, sort of this motion graphics, growing up, kind of motion graphics growing up to do some big stuff. So we were training people.
Yep.
They would, we would set aside a day or two, and they could pick it up so quick because it was so much easier than Mental Ray at that time. Rest in peace, Mental Ray. And yeah, like from there, it was just continuing to build, work on the farm. Like who are we going to hire? How are we going to do this? And get asked to do harder and harder jobs. And I have now been there since January of 2011. So 10 years.
Right.
Straight this time, the longest I've ever worked anywhere. And yeah, and we continue to basically some of those similarities are still there. Extremely fast iteration, a lot of, everything's still directed in-house. We're doing a wider variety of work. We slowly we wanted to do character animation. We were able to do that. We wanted to be able to do more high-end hardware rendering, like we wanted to be respected in that way as well, which we have pretty much done. We've worked on some keynotes. I'm probably not supposed to mention them, but so I won't. But we've worked on keynotes for some companies.
Some fruity keynotes.
Can neither confirm nor deny. And just very lots of challenges. We're always dreaming bigger, and the company has continued to grow in a way that still feels pretty goofy and is slowly growing up, but holds on to a lot of that humor, and the design sensibilities continue to just amaze me. And it still really just continues to be a place that, I get to be around people who have great ideas, and I help them, achieve them. And that feels like awesome. A accomplishment, Now,
is the office still downtown? That's where it used to be, right?
No, we moved about when was it? It would be about 2.5 years ago now. We moved to an area called Lincoln Heights, which is north of Chinatown, nestled in some highways. And it is it's what was Lacey Street Production Studios, which actually still exists. But we basically bought this place that like it's very large. It's got 7 buildings. It's an old historical factory, which had been converted 30 years ago into shooting stages, pretty raw space, but NCIS, and there's a lot of stuff that gets shot. I can't remember the one that's set in Portland. I can't remember the name of that. It's another police drama. They're shooting there all the time, and it's just another place in LA that people shoot. It's got some stages, but we moved into this massive place because we wanted to like have space to build, do miniatures, and we have done some major fabrication and shooting there. There's one spot in particular that we did, which is it was called Share Your Gifts. It was an Apple holiday film from about 2 years ago, and it's a combination of miniatures and CG characters and some full CG. But it was
I think I remember this shot. Yeah.
Tell
us what it is so people can and if you have the link, share it with it, because I remember that shot. That was pretty cool.
I will definitely share the link. It's I think it's still on YouTube. I think it's called Share Your Gifts, and I think that's how they've titled it externally to the world. And this was like 4.5 months, and it was a 3-minute film. It was a holiday film for Apple to, it was just about creativity and a story of a female who sort of doesn't, she does all this artwork, but she kind of locks it away in a box. She doesn't really want to share it. And, like there's an event that triggers sort of her work to be, the wind takes it away. And there it is. It's like, you should watch it. It's, I don't know. It's kind of,
I remember that spot.
It's kind of touching.
Great. And it's about like having all your ideas but you have to let your ideas bloom out into the world.
Exactly.
It was really great.
Yeah. It's like, being an introverted artist. I think I can identify with some of that too. And, but it was a massive parallel. It was just really breakneck speed, and the fabrication that was done is crazy. I'll share the behind the scenes too, but it really is a great example of the kind of work that we love to do. It's got characters, miniatures again. We're moving cameras around over miniatures, tracking things in. We got some like great design, some sort of goofy character moments, and it's hopefully touching. And this is 2 years ago now, but that's like, we've continued to sort of use these spaces that we have now, and we're exploring using them for real time, using them for maybe virtual production, maybe some things like that too. Trying to look into those real time, all of these. So another avenue of computer graphics in general that's
absolutely
opening up.
Absolutely. So what's your role? I mean, obviously, it sounds like Buck is like your role is just to be the most awesome person you can be. But what is your role at Buck? Is there a specific role you have there, or what's kind of the things you do?
I am the global head of CG, and we have New York. We have offices New York, LA, Sydney, and now Amsterdam.
Wow.
And
Buck's gotten really big.
Really, yeah. We're
how big is it? How many people globally?
270 staff.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it's. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. It's hard for me to imagine. We've really gone from being that smaller boutique kind of company to more of, at least in numbers, to a medium, probably, I guess you'd call it a medium-sized company in the world of business. But so what am I doing? That's what, basically trying to help us coordinate, standardize our workflows, make sure that pipeline is moving through. It's really continues to be about building, but quite a bit of working with leads, helping the site supervisors tackle new jobs, working together. It's very administrative, and it's a lot of conversation and yeah, I've been off the box for a while.
I know it's sad when
a couple
most of your
years.
job is email. But I still
call-
love
yeah,
it. I still love it. I still love
Yeah.
it because there's so many great things that are happening at the same time. Every one of those emails that you send out creates great, wonderful things. It gives opportunities for people to do really cool things. So
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like the basically the challenges of helping us accomplish newer and bigger jobs. I'm just trying to stay toe to toe with those challenges, and the way to solve them now is like really about finding talent, empowering, and personally trying to maintain the culture, like helping to maintain the culture, helping to protect, the artists. Like we've all had the experiences at various studios. I think, like, well, you and me, I definitely know we have that, where like things can go awry, or there's just we're grinding gears sometimes, and sometimes it's personality, sometimes it's support, sometimes it's like, why are we working all night and things. And so really trying to that's one of the things I've always been still really trying to protect is, can we just like please have a place where this team they still want to come to work every day, even though they've been working here for a long time. Like, what do we have to do to make sure that people are excited about work? So it's making sure they're challenged, they have creative opportunity, protecting their work-life balance, which has been a huge theme for all of us in the last, year. But even before working from home, it was still a challenge, because there's people can make, when you're an artist and you're in a small team, you feel a lot of responsibility. So just trying to really help set support structures that allow us to like decompress, talk about how to do it better, and just make sure the tools are always working right, and because I think all of that stuff is like little bits. Keep focusing on these little pieces, but they all add up to like making sure that we're having fun, and people are just happy, and they wanna stay, because we're always looking for, like all creative companies, we really want the best talent in the world, and we want them to want to work here and stay working with us. So that's from setting up a render farm to now like thinking about this stuff. It's been my career has definitely been very dynamic and exciting.
Right. Well, that's awesome. That's definitely awesome. Yeah, it's I think Buck is, like I said, they've always done some really great work. And whenever we've, over the years, at Chaos Group, I've been at Chaos Group now 7 years. So it's the longest time that I've been working at any place. I can't call it group anymore. Just have to call it Chaos, because we just rebranded everything. So anyway, I know that every time we do a reel and there's a bunch of really interesting, like unusual things, that it's like, it's probably Buck.
We're trying.
Yeah.
I love to share stuff. I love to get stuff in there if I can. It's great, great way to be recognized, and it's always exciting. I mean, I always try to submit, and then it's always fun to see what you guys choose.
Yeah. The stuff from Buck has been interesting. So you obviously you've been in the company a couple of times, but let's talk a little bit about the history of Buck. Where did it all start? I mean, what's sort of the origin story of that company?
The origin story, the way that it really was spearheaded was Jeff Ellermeyer. He had been working in tech for a while. I believe he was like a computer science. That was what his foundation was, but he got more into business, and he was kind of part of like .com, I think. So he had some success off of that. So like it was like music.com or mp3.com, like a few of these bigger. He had like a hosting company, I believe. Somehow he got to be in a place where he's always appreciated art, and very like what's the right word? Like the company, the Buck is Buckminster Fuller, and that type of thinking
Right.
and that type of like questioning and elegance of problems and solutions, I think is part of the creed, and it's woven in from the beginning. And so he always knew like was interested in art and wanted to. I think it was really just wanted to like get like what's a company, what's a business that I can be involved in that's going to produce artwork, but is sustainable, that can actually make money, and not an art gallery. Like how, like what does this look like? And so it was
Right.
very design focused, and started in 2003, I believe, and it was in Koreatown in a tiny, it was like 2020 Wilshire Boulevard, floor something.
Uh-huh.
It was a a room with a few people, but that's when I first walked into the doors, and Jeff connected. I mean, if I remember this correctly, there's even like the story of like him reaching out, sort of however he could, like even on Craigslist, saying like I'm interested in, people who want to do this. So there was a connection to Heavy.com, which I think was a design. I don't want to call it a design house, but websites and more creative type of .com. And they connected. Ryan Honey was one of the founders.
Was Ryan Honey a director as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think Ryan was the director of the Corolla Spot.
I bet he was there in the room.
Yeah, he's a funny guy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Orion Tate and Jeff Ellemeyer. So those are the three guys that started this place, and it was always like, it was coming off of the late 90s, early 2000s. There was this sort of evolution on the web where I'm remembering a couple famous places like MK12 and another website called Too Advanced, where they were just doing like it was all this like flash animation, and it was like wild. It was very fast and lines drawing.
It was the beginning of what they would call multimedia. Remember that?
Yeah, exactly, right? Like Macromedia Director was a thing then. Mm-hmm. And they, there was arrows and everything for a while, and then there was like flowers and everything, and so it was all these like growing, and it was illustrations, really beautiful illustrations that were meant to animate, and their bread and butter was really around After Effects animation, 2D motion graphics, some 3D motion graphics. And they would just tell you like create, it was just like all about cool stuff. They wanted to go find and create design together. And for a long time, Buck was really design, we would say it's design driven. We don't say that anymore. Now we know it's talent driven. That's truly what the company is. But it was really just around visual arts, and let's try to get into expand that. And they started to do a little bit of live action and then CG.
Yeah,
because they knew these are cool jobs too, and they've already done motion graphics graphics packages, like all of those, like animating some like giant ones they did were like MTV Music Awards and Kami Awards. They would do all of these like spinning animating 2D pieces, and naturally as style progressed into 3D, they already had these connections with these clients, and they would say, oh yeah, let's, like, can you do this type of work for us? Can you do this type of work for us? And then narrative got introduced along the way, and the people they were hiring were interested more in storytelling, and so that became a part of it. And once you let storytelling in, you lose your mind, and you're willing to do anything to work on that kind of work because it's so fun and satisfying.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. That's really amazing. I remember, oh my God. Yeah, it was great working with that. I mean, what was so sad about the Corolla Spot is that it got canned. But the reason it got canned, I don't know if you know this, we we actually created this monster awesome package of all this stuff the Corolla could do. And then the market crashed in 2008. And the people at Toyota said, cancel that entire thing. The only thing that matters is miles per gallon. So they just they took the whole campaign and just used running footage and put miles per gallon. That's it.
Oh yeah. That sounds so like,
It's
yeah, it was like we need to be
a lot
humble.
of money on
We
this.
have to be humble, and it has to be all about value now. And it's not like, oh, you can add this kind of sunroof or like these like running fenders and all this like cool wheels. And yeah, it was like, no, people.
It's like, it was a great campaign, and it was really a shame that happened. But I remember it was fun, and it was fun working on miniatures too. It was actually the first time I worked on a miniature, and that was their idea. Like, I really want to make it look like a miniature. And I was like, this is really cool. So we did that, and it was a lot of fun. So yeah, if you see Ryan, tell him if he remembers that commercial, because I actually had a lot of fun
for sure. We still have stuff pinned up. We had stuff pinned up just till that year or two ago that we moved to this new site. We still have like Toyota, like big printouts from jobs, and there was a bunch of stuff from Toyota still on there.
Yeah, that's
from that spot, because it's just super cool. It looked really good.
Creative.
You guys did a great job. Thank you. I wasn't that buck at the time.
It was your idea. We were just it was funky to try to track because it was a miniature, so we had to track the miniature and then make a CG version and then drive a CG car, because you remember how Sway worked. You had to drive a CG car down this funky miniature road. Okay, so as head of global 3D for Buck, tell me what you think a company like yours, especially a very creative and open-ended company like yourself, how do you guys see the future of what CG is going and creativity is going, and especially now in the post-pandemic era that we're entering? What are your thoughts there? There's a lot of things going on between virtual production, working from home.
Right.
Like what I mean, you've got to have a lot of thoughts in this area.
I mean, I'm in this with everyone else in the industry, so we're all still reacting. For sure, so like, what are the biggest changes have been interested in real-time rendering and really through creative technology, which is VR, AR, lightweight mobile rendering, maybe even server side rendering things. We're doing a lot of exploration of trying to merge this type of very open-ended creative thinking with very technical code bases and like software stacks and things. So that is happening outside the purview of the 3D department, but it's tightly related. We're producing assets and involved in those kinds of jobs. So like, that's something that's, really, as like the screens change, I guess you could say, we're always going to be drawn. We're always riding that wave. So if, or rather when it went from TV to mobiles, we started rendering everything vertically, and it's everything's really short, and it's lots of little pieces and bits for social. And I think really what we're seeing now is that these screens are going to start to blend in with reality through devices like HoloLens, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be, what can I render on a like a mobile GPU in real time? How can I make that look really good with those limitations? And as like interconnectivity, 5G, wireless, and these things, like, this sounds, I'm honestly not trying to sell anything, but like, I really believe that like rendering on server may come back as well, where you're just like pumping through really high res graphics that are being rendered in real time through, like, kind of like what we're seeing with those services like Google Stadia that are just really game streaming services. Like, eventually I think that will be integrated with sensors on the, that the user is holding, and rendering happening on device or close to the device from the cloud maybe. That is going to open up a ton of avenues for creativity and interaction. So I think that maybe what we're calling experiential, maybe what we're calling like XR, like those things are going to have a huge impact. And it's all sort of happening around game engines right now, but I'm very excited to see that, that chaos is staying, is there as well,
right?
With Vantage and maybe even V-Ray Vision. Like those things are very interesting to me, and I would rather have those kinds of technologies come into the DCCs that we're already using. Like I would love for those technologies to come closer to Maya than for us to go work in a game development environment that happens to have a really awesome real-time rendering system,
right,
like Unreal or Unity.
Well, the thing that Vlado and I always say is like, real-time rendering is going to replace offline rendering for sure, because that's the next logical step. But rasterized rendering is not going to replace real-time ray tracing.
Ray tracing, yeah.
So we've always been dedicated to ray tracing, right? So Vision is it's one way to sort of get a little bit of rasterization in there, but that's not really our future. Our future is really lies where fully ray traced environments are, right? So that's where we're going to be looking to, and that is where I see the future of all of this being. And there's a lot of companies out there that are saying real-time ray tracing, but you and I know that's not real-time ray tracing.
Yeah.
It's basically
it's
real-time
hybrid.
Rasterizing with a little bit of ray tracing on top.
Right, exactly, and a ton of
which is what
denoising.
you and I did back in the early 2000s, and it was horrible.
Yes, definitely. I am waiting.
You had to you're basically asking it to render twice. You're asking to rasterize it and then ray trace it on top of that.
Yeah, and the fact that they're that they're trying to path trace these things, sort of, or going with these more noisy approaches, is like the denoising is as much of a miracle of sort of what is RTX, and these are like the denoising algorithms are doing so much work, because when you look at it without that, you can see. Yeah, they're taking like one sample per pixel, they're taking, the stuff is super noisy, and the amount of noise and grain that they're removing is incredible, to keep things running, in video games at those. So, but yeah, like I totally agree that, that getting that, like probably someone will be able to run that type of, fidelity, like today's fidelity, that works on a PlayStation 5 or something, will probably be in a mobile device at some point. And who knows what will be happening on the big, back on the big hardware crunching.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I think remoting into a computer that will do it for you makes more sense. So, but the only way that's going to happen is if you reduce latency, and latency is your problem with those.
Definitely. Yeah. For like interactivity and, so like that's definitely, for the Buck perspective on that is just to try to do it with the most amount of polish and the highest fidelity, and to try to be known for really producing the highest quality image,
right.
So
but you guys are beyond the highest quality image. You guys are looking at narrative. You guys are looking at creativity, and you guys originality. So all of those things are things that you guys are strong at doing. You just happen to deliver it into a really nice image as well.
I should say that's probably more my hang up, is that I'm really still like the, I would rather let it cook and have it come back kind of as a
right
correctness, or whatever you guys would call it.
Sure.
Is, like I still appreciate that, and I think we're getting pretty close to being able to see that in real time at a level where we can start to really have fun with it and be creative, and not maybe go through so much baking and so much, kind of like having to do all of this work up front, so that when you run the thing in real time, it looks as close as possible to the offline.
Right.
I think it feels like we're getting pretty close to having this to the point where, okay, like maybe we don't need to bake as much stuff. And sure, I need to have I can't be using tons of procedural textures and deep shading networks, and that's not going to work in real time. But we can still make a very good looking image, and I'd like for it always to be as close to offline rendering as possible.
Nice.
Yeah, and it like so that's my perspective and sort of the more traditional CG perspective. The rest of the company, like you said, is branching out into multiple areas. There's so much more that we do now, that I, like branding and just like IP. I mean, that's something that's like the dream, is to pivot and create and own some of our own things. And it's really wide open right now. It's like maybe gaming, maybe episodic, or story, anything that's like really narrative and story based. But I have a feeling it's going to be probably not be your traditional sort of like we'll pitch on movies. I think it's going to be more interactivity and sort of more on these smaller scale kinds of interactions, like storytelling directly to children through Kindles or through like devices, like future devices, and rendering in real time, and really just trying to provide, like audio experience, have it all there, have the right sound and story and animation to go with it. It's a lot. There's a lot.
It's a lot of stuff, man.
There's a lot of, it's like, it's really gone from being like, let's be the best at these like 3 or 4 things to trying to do, to be the best in other areas too, and
right.
We're going to be careful about it and make sure that we always, try to, that we want to protect our reputation and let people know that like they should come to us for a certain quality level, and they're going to, and service and all these
they're going to get
things.
it.
But yeah.
That's awesome. Well, listen, we've gone over an hour, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but this has been really great catching up with you and seeing all this stuff. And it's nice to think about those. We had a lot of fun at DD together. I do remember those Tron days. They were a blast. And it's so funny. I didn't realize your connection with Thrawn. I was like, oh my God. Because Thrawn, he directed that V-Ray IRL piece, right?
Yep.
You remember that?
Yeah, totally.
So it's been really great, and please give my best to the guys at Buck, and you guys have always been great collaborators on stuff that we do for Chaos Group or Chaos. I got to get used to it. It's been 20 years, dude. I'm sorry. It's only been a week that I've been used to Chaos. So yeah, thank you so much for all that stuff, and I can't wait to see what you guys are going to do next.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. It was a total pleasure. Thanks for having me.